Hello everyone, welcome to my channel. Please subscribe and hit the bell icon. This bad horror movie. Why Taylor Sheridan rejects his directorial debut that's nothing like his Western movies and TV shows. TV writer, producer, and director Taylor Sheridan may have been popularized by his neo-Western series, Yellowstone, but as it turns out, he actually made his directorial debut with a horror movie that he now publicly dislikes. Sheridan has been part of the entertainment industry since the 1990s. Though he began his career as an actor, he eventually transitioned to screenwriting and eventually showrunning. Currently, he has his hands full running an empire of popular neo-Western and thriller series, but long ago, he dipped his toes into another, more unexpected genre. In general, audiences tend to be unfamiliar with Sheridan's filmography prior to Yellowstone. Few people are aware that Sheridan wrote hit movies such as Hell or High Water and Sicario. In fact, Sheridan still has his hands in the movie business, with one of his most recent projects being 2021's Those Who Wish Me Dead, an action thriller that he wrote, directed, and produced himself. However, the most obscure project on Sheridan's resume, hands down, would have to be his first ever feature film, Vile. In 2011, Sheridan made his directorial debut with a horror movie titled Vile. The film follows a group of friends who are tricked into taking part in a twisted experiment after helping a woman at a gas station. Over the course of 22 hours, the captives are forced to endure horrible pain, so that a chemical in their brain can be extracted for later use. According to Sheridan, this bad horror movie was not his own project, but was written by a friend who asked Sheridan to direct. Sheridan noted, "I kind of kept the ship pointed straight, Rotten Tomatoes." Essentially, Sheridan admits that Vile is technically his directorial debut, but he had no emotional attachment to the story, and really just stepped in for a friend. Additionally, his judgment of the film as bad isn't too far off. On Rotten Tomatoes, Vile has no critic score and a 30% audience score. Viewers were mostly satisfied with the movie's gore, but found that the story was full of plot holes, and were highly frustrated with the ending. Ultimately, it makes sense why Sheridan has stepped back from this film. Considering that Vile has nothing to do with Sheridan in terms of storytelling, it would make more sense to consider Wind River as his directorial debut. This 2017 neo-Western crime drama follows a U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service tracker and an FBI agent who team up to investigate the murder of a woman on a reservation. Unlike Vile, Wind River is perfectly in line with the types of stories Sheridan likes to tell. The movie combines a bleak Western setting with a mysterious crime to create a gripping and well-crafted tale. Taylor Sheridan has become a towering figure in modern television and film, known for gritty, introspective, and unapologetically American tales like Yellowstone, Hell or High Water, Sicario, and Wind River. With his signature blend of rugged individualism, morally ambiguous lawmen, and landscapes as harsh as the choices his characters face, Sheridan has carved a place as the cowboy bard of 21st century storytelling. But Sheridan didn't always ride tall in the saddle. Before the dusty towns, wide-angle shots of Montana ranches, and neo-Western myth-making, there was Vile, a 2011 horror movie that Sheridan now jokingly, and somewhat bitterly, refers to as this bad horror movie. It's his only directorial effort to date, and it's a film he has since disowned, dismissed, and distanced himself from as much as possible. The gap between Vile and the rest of Sheridan's canon is so wide it's almost comical. So what is Vile, and why does the man who wrote Sicario and created Yellowstone want to bury it 6 feet under? A not-so-vile beginning. Let's set the scene. Back in the late 2000s, Sheridan was just another working actor. He had a solid recurring role on Sons of Anarchy as Deputy David Hale, but as he approached 40, he was becoming increasingly disillusioned with the Hollywood hamster wheel. Typecast, underpaid, and creatively boxed in, Sheridan decided to pivot toward writing and directing. The result? A small horror film that he hoped would kickstart a new chapter of his career. Vile tells the story of a group of people who wake up in a locked house, each implanted with a device that tracks a strange fluid in their brains. The only way to escape is to fill a container with this brain fluid, extracted by experiencing extreme pain. It's a gore-soaked, panic-fueled morality tale, borrowing more from Saw than Unforgiven. Sheridan wrote, directed, and even co-produced the film, which was shot on a shoestring budget. He used the name Taylor Sheridan, but in interviews afterward, he's implied that the version that ended up being released was taken out of his hands, edited without his final say, and ultimately not reflective of his vision. Sheridan's regret: I don't claim that one. In the years since, Sheridan has made no secret of his disdain for Vile. In interviews, he's candid, even brutally honest, about the experience. I don't claim that one, he once said in a press junket for Wind River. That was a different time, a different guy, and frankly, it just wasn't a good movie. He's not wrong. Vile is the kind of horror flick that disappears into the algorithmic void of late-night streaming, only to be discovered by genre completionists or accident. It's riddled with cliches, one-dimensional characters, and low-budget limitations that highlight its amateur status. For a filmmaker who would later master character nuance and narrative tension, Vile feels more like a high school garage band demo than a professional debut. What's striking is how utterly un-Sheridan Vile is. There are no horses, no sun-scorched moral dilemmas, no long silences filled with emotional weight. It's loud, grotesque, and oddly impersonal, everything his later work would avoid. The learning curve. Still, Sheridan has acknowledged that Vile wasn't a total waste. It was a crucible. The experience taught him the basics of filmmaking, how to manage a set, work with actors, and most importantly, what kind of stories he didn't want to tell. It was the best education I could have had, he said in an early podcast interview. I learned what not to do. I learned that if I'm going to spend years of my life on something, it better be something I believe in. From that point forward, Sheridan leaned into his true voice. He wrote Sicario, and later Hell or High Water, both dark, complex, and emotionally rich explorations of crime and justice in the American Southwest. These weren't just thrillers. They were sociopolitical autopsies wrapped in the grime of realism. Sheridan found his lane, and he never looked back. A cowboy, not a chainsaw wielder. What makes Sheridan's dismissal of Vile more than just an artist brushing off an early misstep is how fully it contrasts with everything he's known for now. Yellowstone, his magnum opus, is obsessed with legacy, land, and law. The violence in his world is never just for show. It's always tethered to character, family, or fate. In Vile, violence is spectacle. There's no poetic justice, no frontier code, just a grotesque game. It's horror for horror's sake. While that genre has its place and loyal fan base, it simply isn't Sheridan's style. His approach to storytelling demands purpose, pain, and ultimately a philosophical backbone. Vile offered only the pain. Should we bury Vile? Maybe not. While Sheridan himself might want it forgotten, Vile offers something that his later films can't. A glimpse into what happens when a creative mind is still searching for its voice. It's a relic of artistic adolescence, a rough sketch drawn before the real masterpiece was even imagined. And in a strange way, it adds depth to his later work. Knowing that Sheridan started with something like Vile makes the evolution to Wind River or Mayor of Kingstown all the more impressive. He didn't arrive fully formed. He built, failed, learned, and then built better. For fans of Sheridan, Vile is a curiosity, like a dusty journal entry from a time before the man found his North Star. You won't find wide prairie vistas or intense family drama, but you will find the roots of a man who wanted desperately to be more than a Hollywood cog. The redemption of a bad horror movie. Sheridan may never return to directing horror, or directing at all, for that matter, but Vile remains part of his cinematic DNA. And as he continues to write and produce some of the most popular series on television, there's a certain poetic irony that it all began with a movie he refuses to claim. In the end, Vile isn't a badge of shame. It's proof that even the great storytellers start somewhere rough, raw, and not quite right. So maybe the next time you find yourself scrolling through late-night horror options and stumble upon Vile, don't just skip past it. Watch it for what it is, the ghost of a filmmaker's past, haunting him in the best way possible.